Welcome to Right Brain Left Field. I'm your host, Derek Daly. On this episode, we sit down with accomplished director and photographer Adam Warmington. Adam's a 6'5" surfer from Bristol, England, whose passion for the outdoors and storytelling led him to the San Francisco Bay Area. Adam recounts his journey and tells us how he turned his passion into a successful photography and filmmaking career, garnering numerous awards for his work with some of the world's biggest brands in tech and action sports. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey, Adam. Thanks for coming by.
Very welcome. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. It's been a little while. I can't remember when the last time we saw each other face to face, but probably on a job.
I think so. I think it was that photography job, and then we talked about a couple things since then, but they didn't materialize. But
Yeah, that's right. I think you were just breaking in those boots that you're wearing in now, if I recall correctly. So
yeah, now they're fully hipsterfied. They've got ample scuffs. They actually look better than when I bought them. So
they look good. They
happy
look good.
days.
I know it took a long time for mine to get comfortable, but I see yours are like
actually,
well worn in.
These Red Wings, I don't mean to call out the brand, but the first 2 weeks was brutal. I had to wear Band-Aids all over my feet to get these things going, but now they're like a glove. So
yeah, that's kind of what I read in the beginning too. I kind of just put on thicker socks and just kind of made my way through it. But yeah, once they break in, they're great. You know, Josh and I put this together, this idea for this podcast. We put together a list of guests, and you were up there pretty quickly. And I think it was because when I think of my network and I think of the people that I've worked with in the past, I'm drawn to the people who I am envious sort of in some ways of the career path they take, because you've done a really good job of parlaying your passion for surfing and outdoor sports into a career. And so, I dabble in photography a little bit. I wouldn't say filmmaking, but you definitely an inspiration. I don't know if you remember when I made that. I made kind of a family video. I sent you a link, and I'd kind of cut together a lot of scenes, and I was very inspired by your work in general. So a lot of the things that I did, I kind of bit from what you did. And when I was actually just looking at your work earlier today and reviewing it again, I had all these flashbacks of like, oh yeah, that's why I did this shot on that one. So again, I really appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us and, talk to us about your career and kind of, how you've gotten to where you're at. And that's what we're going to dive into today.
Awesome. I'm very happy to be here. I've never really talked about myself or my career at length like this, so I'm kind of curious to see where it goes.
Cool. Awesome. So you and I met through a mutual friend, one of my coworkers, colleagues, guy I've been working with a long time, Alex Statham. How did you guys meet? Because Alex and I were working together. I had started KDM in early 2000s, and Alex was a designer that came across our path, and a really talented designer. And then we brought him on, and I've been working together with him in one capacity or another for 15 years. And you guys had a relationship.
When I first moved to the Bay in 2005, so I grew up surfing. I've surfed my whole life. It's defined a lot of kind of who I am. Specifically bodyboarding, which is kind of I can get hated on a little bit. It's kind of a niche part of the surf community, and bodyboarders tend to find other bodyboarders because there's not much of us. And we also like to surf the same kind of waves, like heavy, slabby, wedging waves. So I moved to the Bay and surfing Ocean Beach and ran into Alex and immediately became buddies and started going down to Santa Cruz on the weekends and stuff. Obviously found out what he does for his career, and it's kind of similar to what I was doing. And so we were just our surfing friendship moved from, the beach to professional stuff too. And then there was a point in time when I was transitioning out of a workplace, a working environment, and looking for new opportunities. And I remember hitting up Alec, knowing he was part of the design community and the agency community, and that kind of led me to you and Mike and KDM and your RCG and everything else. So Alex is awesome.
It's funny because speaking of hating on bodyboarding, since I grew up in a surf shop, I was a skateboarder. Yeah. But some of that hate was real sponge boarders. And I used to give Alex a lot of shit for that. I think I kind of pulled back over the years and just respect for anyone. I mean, it's hard. It's funny, you grow up because I don't do any water sports. So, well, actually that's not true. I go paddleboarding sometimes and probably in the pantheon of water sports. That's gotta be the item, least hardcore.
The segue of no, it's that just came. I've never thought about that, but it kind of is. But there's no doubt. I mean, bodyboarding is the kind of rollerblading of that's the comparison. And if I think of skating, I've skated too, and I love skating and I look at rollerblading and it looks ridiculous to me. And then I know that's how people view bodyboarding, but I just encourage anyone to Google Pierre Costes or Ben Player or any of the top dudes and
No, I gave Alex enough shit that he pushed, but he gave me enough ammunition to say, dude, come on.
Yeah.
And then also when I saw guys standing up on bodyboards, I was like, oh, okay.
Well, there's been a shift too in the last like 10, 15 years where the kind of waves bodyboarders gravitate towards are kinds of waves that surfers shy away from. They're heavier, they're scarier, there's more consequence.
Sure.
Surfing's evolved such that surfers are now surfing what are called, quote unquote bodyboard waves. But through that transition, surfers have gained a lot of respect for bodyboarders. So like in Hawaii and Canary Islands, Australia, or the main kind of hot spots, like bodyboarders are like, they're up there, they're sitting at the peak of the surfers and equal respect. So
Totally.
Anyway, boots and bodyboarding. That's what we've covered.
Well, so speaking of people that we have in common, and speaking of surfing and surf shops, I grew up in a surf shop, grew up skateboarding, and that surf shop at the time was called Marin Surf Sports. It's now called Proof Labs. And I know that you also know that whole crew, and you're kind of in with the guys who run that place, right?
Yeah.
So you've got the Marin connection there, and
I love
Nate and like
I do, Nate and Will. I love those guys. Those guys, like, well, first of all, what they've done for that part of Mill Valley and Marin in general is insane.
It's amazing. That
whole compound,
they own Tam Junction, right?
They do.
It might as well just be called Proof Lab Junction.
Yeah, it was this kind of like conduit thoroughfare to get to Munio Beach, and now it's like a destination. There's like both shops. There's the ramp. There's the new Hook Fish Co. restaurant with the bar. It's like you could go there and spend like 6 hours, man. It's the Equator Coffee place. The way I met Nate and Will is right when I moved here. I was very much into surf photography, but like kind of didn't really know what I was doing, and came from a place that doesn't really have good waves, but wanted to explore that creatively. And so started shooting Ocean Beach, and very quickly got a number of photos that like got a little bit of traction. I got a double page spread running Surfer magazine, and so immediately like I'm like this English, like 6'5" English bodyboarder, like the least likely person to integrate into like a kind of hardcore San Francisco surf community.
Yeah.
But through photography, kind of like weaseled my way in.
Right.
Through those photos, met all the boys and was kind of like welcomed for the most part. There's a dark side too, but like pretty much welcomed for the most part. And then a big part of that was Proof Lab and Nate and Will. And Nate always wanted to try and shoot, and like And so I just love that shop. They're just an awesome part of the community.
Yeah, that's awesome. You said you showed up and you started taking photos. So why don't we first unpack with you showed up from where?
Okay, obviously, well, not obviously, I kind of sound like people can't figure out where I'm from because I've lived in a bunch of different places and my accent's a bit weird at this point, but born and raised in Bristol, England, in the southwest of England, through a number of events, mostly defined by me meeting my now wife, Shea. I've ended up in the States. There's obviously many, many stages there, but leaping forward to like connecting where I'm from to landing in Ocean Beach and photography. I grew up surfing. I started surfing when I was like 15.
In England?
In England, yeah. Cold, nasty. Can't open the car door because you can't move your fingers. Like it's a whole.
I don't want to sound like a total idiot here, but are there surf spots?
Yeah. No, I mean England's an island. That's
well, no, I mean. now I really do sound like an idiot. No.
Actually, that's technically wrong. England is a country in the UK, which is an island. So anyway,
sure.
We got waves from the Atlantic. That our only problem is that they're massive, and we have to look for nooks and crannies that aren't in the wind.
Okay, so like I mean, I'm not a total jackass, right? There's very few and far in between. It's not a big scene. It's
way bigger than you would think.
Okay.
Yeah, when I started, it was definitely a thing. It was anchored around Newquay, the main surf town in England. Just like anywhere, it's gone Richter now because surfing's kind of become trendy. And yeah, man, there's kinds of spots in England. There's beach breaks, points, reefs.
I guess it's just one of those association things, right? I just don't think about that.
We don't have like world-class waves. There's a really shallow continental shelf off of England, which means that all of the open ocean swells kind of get dampened by the time they get to us. And then it's always 40-mile-an-hour onshore winds, and it just becomes impossible. But if you kind of follow the charts and know what you're doing-ish, you can find good waves.
But you also went to school.
Yeah, I went to school in Swansea, which is 100%...
Wales?
100% defined by the fact that it's on the coast. There's like 3 options in England to go to university where there's waves.
I've actually been to Wales.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful, rainy country. Pretty shitty city, as they say in the film Twin Town. I love it. It was amazing. It's funny. I've talked to Americans about their college choice, and MIT has a great design program, and this has a great English program. And for me, it was like, where are the universities that are on the coast? Because I'm going to be here for 4 years, and I want to surf every day. And so I ended up in Swansea, and it was fine.
What do you mean fine?
That's a good question.
What you mean? You got a degree?
Yeah, I mean,
you got an education. You met some people.
The friends made, like exceptional lifelong friends.
Of course.
Shout out to Andy Monkley and Doug, if you're listening. The kind of, let's call it cultural experiences were incredible. Just a great kind of party, fun time town. Educationally, it was like I got my degree in American history or American studies, which is basically American history and literature. There's nothing in my degree experience that I can specifically point to that like has led me to what I'm doing today.
But you were studying America so you could move here.
No, well, maybe. I was interested in the country. I was interested in the country because it's almost like the history of the last 200 years is globally is kind of the American story. Just as like a stepping stone, getting away from like being at your parents' house before like being in the real world and having to think about rent and adult stuff. That's the big takeaway for university for me. Just like working odd jobs, working in bars, learning a foundation in liberal arts, whatever. I would do it again and I would tell my kids to do it.
Did you take any art courses? You take any photography, any filmmaking, anything that would be useful in what you ended up?
What's a trip is, so we have a thing called college, which isn't university. What we call college is what you do between 16 and 18, where at 16 you finish your main high school education and then you specialize in 3 subjects and you go to quote unquote college and you do your A-levels prior to going to university. In that college period, 16 to 18, I took an elective in video editing, like at lunchtimes. And that was like my first ever blush, other than tinkering around with cameras, because my dad's kind of a photographer and an artist. That was my first blush with like, I guess, the broader world of filmmaking. And I remember me and my buddy Tom Lamshead would go in there every lunchtime and we would do like VHS kind of reel to reel rewinding and then making these little clips. And I made this like thing, a 1 minute surf video. And it's funny because in retrospect, I'm like, why didn't that like light a fire that I went and did and that was just me forever. But essentially went to university thinking I needed to like study something to like think about a career and da-da-da. And then in retrospect, that little moment and that like lunchtime elective in, reel-to-reel video editing was really the thing I came back to when I did university, traveled around the world for 2 years, came back and was like, oh, what do I do now? Everything's real.
It was a dormant seed.
Yeah, exactly.
You planted this dormant seed.
Yeah, and then I come back from my travels and this dormant seed is like this like, chest-high sunflower ready to go kind of. Yeah, man, that was the beginning of all of it. I look back at that little moment super fondly because it was such a flippant thing to engage in and sign up for, and it really kind of like defined everything career-wise.
That's really cool. I remember that when Alex had introduced us and then we looked at it, I don't even remember the specific project we first were talking to you about. I don't think that's the one we engaged on. But I do know that you were working at Current TV and I saw a reel and you were doing a lot of editing and I knew you were kind of like moving fast. You'd been there for a couple of years and I was just impressed because I had dabbled a little bit in it and I like the medium, I like it all, but I think how sometimes you get to a certain point in your career and it's like you have these other interests and you like it, but if you don't go full on, you can't do it half-assed. And so for me, that's what that was about. It was like, I can't, like, I like the idea of like editing some films and I'd played with Premiere and After Effects and all of the applications. And I liked doing that stuff, but I realized like to do it well was going to take full focus. So you must have figured that out at some point, right? I mean, you're talking about dabbling in surf photography, but I know that you're a very accomplished director and, obviously your work is award winning. You've done a lot of stuff for some of the biggest brands. You've made some beautiful films. Can you talk to me a little bit about the genesis of that? I mean, we talked about the dormant seed, right? That you planted, you did this there. But how does it end up, like, how do you end up at, Current TV, right? That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
And how do you end up there? And then what happens from there to, post that when we start talking about working together and kind of start working in that capacity?
Okay, I'll try it. There's lots of steps there, and I don't.
I know. I gave you a very loaded, long.
I don't want to bore anyone, but okay. So I mean, the editing thing is very much alive, and I would consider myself like my kind of creative DNA, like first and foremost as an editor. I think it's like kind of the most overlooked and underrated and underappreciated and exciting part of filmmaking.
So you think that's the foundation of like your like skill set? You think that's like the driving?
Like in terms of like filmmaking, yes-ish. But then there's this other thread that's very much alive, which is image creation. So there are a lot of people that are like directors or cinematographers or editors, and that's what they do, and that's all they do. For me, I was doing all these kind of things at once and enjoying them all and getting incrementally better at them all. which is fast forward kind of what I do now. I would classify myself as a filmmaker. I want to do the whole thing. I want to be shooting and directing, or one or the other, or sometimes at the same time. And then I edit a lot of my own stuff. That seed of editing was very much alive. And then the big kind of like moment was when I met my wife, 2003. I was working at Aardman Animations, which did Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run and all that kind of stuff. It's in my hometown in Bristol. I can't remember how I got the job. I think it's because I volunteered at a film festival and then met someone or something like that. Very sought after company. If you're going to work in media in Bristol, I mean, there's the BBC and Aardman. That's it. So
and you also work for BBC.
I did. So yeah, I was making coffee basically at Aardman and then loading film as 35mm film days, and there was a number of different ways that could have gone. Ultimately, I decided that like working with clay figurines wasn't my jam. I want to be around people. I'm a people person, so I was like, I want to be in what was referred to as live action, and so ended up at the BBC still as a kind of runner, PA type person. And then gradually working my way up to a slightly higher level than that, but really not that far, still very, very junior. But just like being around people, being around the BBC, the Natural History Department, the David Attenborough stuff, and like all these people were doing all these amazing things and all these amazing, and just trying to just like learn and absorb it as much as I could. And then I would spend my lunches going into the Avid suites and like taking old BBC tapes and just fighting around editing. And then so that's when that quote unquote seed came back. I was like, all right, editing, I remember this from St. Brennan's, my sixth form college, and started fighting around in editing, and then very quickly realized that this is something I was like very engaged and very into. So BBC happens, I meet my wife, fast forward a lot of stuff. She's American. We are going backwards and forwards between England and America for about a year or two, something like that. And I met a group of people that she was affiliated with in her university. She went to the Laguna Beach LCAD, like art college place. She was just around these people. So first of all, herself, she was just so driven to make art at any cost. She wasn't thinking about like doing it as a hobby, but then, being an accountant on the side, no disrespect to accountants. And then all of her friends were doing the same thing. Ulrich was just being an artist, and Phil was just being a musician, and this guy John Reineck was just being a surf photographer, and all these people were just like going for it in artistic fields without like, not as hobbies, but like where I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all the time. And I hadn't really experienced that. Like most of the people I grew up with, and this is, it's fine too. Everyone, you get a job, you go through life, you go to the pub on the weekend, and that's perfectly fine. But like there was this new like way of being that I was introduced to, which was like actually thinking about what you want to do and what are you good at, and trying to do that all the time and get really good at it and just do that in your life.
Right.
And I 100% attribute that to my wife and her like cohort. So the editing seed came back around, and I just started flying around and making stuff. And we ended up living in Tucson, her hometown, for a little while. And I made a short film about this cowboy called Sky. You probably dig it up. Super just rad. He was like my wife's mom's horse trainer. Just this like, he has hold fast tattooed on his knuckles. He he was involved with all kinds of stuff that I can't really talk about on this podcast. Like just this gnarly, rad, American, just rugged hero cowboy guy. And I'd never met anyone like him in my life. And I made a little film about him. I just shot it on a Panasonic 3-chip. I edited it on Final Cut Pro in my wife's parents' guest house. And that was the beginning of the Current TV thing. I sent that to Current TV as like a user-generated. They were doing this thing. They were pioneering user-generated content. This was like in the infancy of YouTube and regular people, quote unquote, making stuff. The trick there is it wasn't really regular people. They were tapping junior filmmakers and paying them to make stuff, but off the record. But like, so I was one of those people, and they paid me whatever, $500 or something, and sent them this film, and then they aired it, and it got a little traction, and people were talking about it a little bit, and that's ultimately how I ended up getting the job at Current TV and ended up in the Bay.
You and I touched on this earlier, but you alluded to it, so I would like to hear a little bit more from you in this capacity, because my wife and I personally met in college. We met in the design program as well. She's an artist as well. She's a designer / artist. She recently has kind of just spun a career, an art, like more fine art career. Kind of, she's done a lot of things over the last few years. Floral designer. She was a web designer when we both broke into the industry together. Then she went and she took a lot of classes. She got an education doing floral design. And now she's a fine artist. And I'm so impressed with her every day with her journey. She'll eventually be a guest. I felt like that was a little too much, though, for right off the bat. But it sounds like you have a little bit of the same thing with your wife. Like she's talented. She's making a career out of it. You guys have that. And it sounds like also you alluded to having a network of a lot of creative types and friends, which is a topic that we're exploring here. Like, I think when Josh and I sat down and started mapping out guests and looking at like who we know and the people we're drawn to, and the fact that he and I have been best friends since first grade, and our friend Jason, who we're going to meet up with later tonight, he's an art director at Pixar. He's he's an amazing artist. Started realizing, oh my God, like there's this whole network of super uber talented creative people. And I think that they're kind of drawn to each other, right? Those are the people that you make. And I know that makes sense. I'm sure that people in other careers are drawn to other people, but I just feel like this is a little bit different. I feel like when you've made a career as a creative person, it's not just people that you work with, but you have a network of people because those are your close friends, whether you collaborate with them or not, or you just have a mutual respect, you have some sort of, bond.
Totally.
It sounds like that's your network. I don't want to put too much on it. But
I think we're talking about tribes, right? And it's like within any group of people with common interests, they form a tribe. Like say, even stepping away from like the creative endeavors, like surfing is very much that. Like I just surfed today at Ocean Beach, and probably saw 20 people I know because we all know when the tide's good and what the swell's doing and which sandbars are good. And so inevitably you get there at like 1:30 when you know it's good, and there's 6 other people that you're scratching your head while they're at work too. It's like it's your tribe, and creatively, I think very much so. I think that I think it's equal parts like kind of proactive and organic, at least in my case. Like I early on was very much seeking that out. Meeting Cher, my wife, and her kind of Laguna cohort, I was like attracted to that. I wanted it. I wanted more of it. And I wanted to meet people like that. And I was kind of proactively going after that and seeking it. And at this point, it's kind of like, if I think about my friends and my network of people in general, but specifically creatives, it feels like all of those people are just people that have just like, I don't know where they've come from. They've just like crept around the corner and now I know them, right? It's like, it feels just natural and organic. Like I work on a thing with someone and that person is cool, and then we hang out, and then I end up working on his or her thing, and then they introduce me to someone else and you have an even bigger connection with that person, and so on and so forth. And then you just fast forward and you just know all these people that are doing all kinds of cool stuff. And it's funny you mentioned, I forget what was in reference to, I think it was me, and you were like, I'm like envious of like a career path or something like that. And like, I think if I think about everyone I know in the creative industry, I'm like appreciative and a little bit envious of all of them, which is like a cool kind of energy, like not the kind of negative energy that comes from Instagram and people posting the best versions of themselves. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, if you're surrounded by people that are doing stuff that you think's awesome and you kind of want to be doing too, it just kind of fires you up and you want to be around them more, and you just feed off of that and they feed off of you. And it's just this like cyclical, wonderful thing.
Absolutely. It's funny because Josh and I think when we were talking to Josh Davis, DJ Shadow, one of the coolest parts I thought of our interview, and Josh, you tell me, I mean, I think we both kind of like, when we heard this, we were like, wow, that's cool. We were going along the same lines, and he said, yeah, I just kind of consider that like a talent crush. You meet someone, and he said,
that's real.
I'm unabashedly like open to saying like, I love what you do. And when he said that, I thought that was huge, right? That was like and he even said it to the point where he said, I've met other music artists who I geek out on. And he's like, then I have to start wondering and thinking if they're like, oh, whoa, this dude's coming on a little too aggressive. he's like, but I don't care. He's like, I don't care. So I mean, you listen to that episode, you can hear Josh talk more about that.
Well, first of all, I couldn't believe you had Shadow on. I know he's your boy, but like, it's funny. People listening, especially in the States, would be like, what does this English guy know about hip hop? Me and my friends kind of grew up in hip hop in that golden era. I'm from Bristol, which is Massive Attack and Portishead. So we all grew up in that like trip hop scene and all that kind of stuff. So when I met you and then I knew you knew Shadow, like he was like, that's like, oh, by the way, like, I know Kanye. Like, it's a big deal. Like,
I still regret that you and I didn't make the video that we talked about making, collaborating. And we had our shot. And you know what? I'll tell you this. I don't think that window's closed.
No, I was meaning to talk to you while we're here. And like, we're talking about creative stuff, right? One of the things that I keep on telling myself I want to do and then never make time for, and a lot of my inner circle, my buddy Noah, Ben, Keenan, everyone's always talking about like making time to do passion projects. I mean, that would be one. I mean, there's some of the ideas that we're kicking around. And I think the next video I saw that he did after we had talked was the one with Run the Jewels in that crazy like UN looking place.
That's one of the best. That's literally, I still think to this day, that might be one of the best music videos of all time.
For sure. It went.
So we would have put out some little art film collaboration.
I know.
It was like Ashes to Oceans was a song. And I know we were thinking like surf theme and we were thinking all these things. And that would have been really cool. I'm sure we would have done something that would have been.
I wanted to do, I think you vetoed it, but I wanted to do like.
It was surfers. I wanted to do like
surfers, but like.
Surfers in Santa Cruz in skeleton.
Yeah, like a little nod to kind of what's it called, Karate Kid, like the skeleton, like imagine wetsuits but they're skeletons and it's like surfers and it's nighttime. Anyway, someone else is gonna make that now. Well, maybe not.
Part of even working together over this period of time, I think, comes down to a mutual respect for what the other person does. And so, I hope that we haven't worked together as much as I would like to, and I always looking for those opportunities. But I think that there's something still there that there's that bond. That's why you're in my consciousness. But I'm like, man, when I want to talk to creative people.
Yeah, people don't want to, you want to be around people that think the same way you do and what you think is cool is what they think it's cool. And so when you do something together, there's no friction and it's just all good. Right? And the Talent Crush thing is super interesting because like, I think it like gets broken into like, there's many different layers to it, right? Like I see like, I'm referencing Instagram again, but like, I see feeds of like DPs, cinematographers that I know and I follow and we know each other loosely perhaps. And I see what they're doing and it's just like this like beautiful images. And I'm like, man, like I'm not doing stuff that looks like that. I want to be doing stuff that looks like that. And then I see people that are like doing really beautiful actual documentary storytelling. There's a lot of like quote unquote documentary style stories happening right now for brands that like doc, but they're not really doc. You're manufacturing the whole thing. And then I see people that are doing actual, like there's a guy, Mohammed, who runs a little production company, Even Odd, that does a really good job of it. So I see that and I see the type of stories he's doing. And then I see the type of cinematography, like, I don't know, a Kate Randy is doing. And then the type of score someone else is doing. And I have these talent crushes for like different pieces of what I do. I think I'm mostly positive and then I take away and inform and it makes me want to make better work. But, it's also a source of anxiety. You put something out and you think it's rad and then you see something else and it's cooler and you're like, oh, Anyway, I wrestle with that as much as everyone else.
You actually just rolled right into the influences portion that I was going to kind of ask you about. I think you've kind of got some of that. You know what? I want to focus on a few things. I would like to know how you have made now. I think if my timing is right, looking at from when you left Current to now, you've got about roughly 11 years, I'm going to say on your own, but I don't mean on your own because you've worked with a lot of other people. What I'd like to know is how have you gone about making this into, because AdamWarmington.com, that's your personal site, but I also know that it's not just you. It's not just you out there. You've got a team of people. You work on large scale projects. You've got a lot of collaborators. So, but what I guess what I don't know is how did you turn that into a business? How did you turn from, you went from the path of working full time for a company, Current TV, it's .com, there's jobs everywhere. You're doing everything's like quick live production. And then you said, you know what, I got to do this myself. How did you get there? And how have you made a career out of it over 11 years? Because you've done a damn good job, I think.
Thanks, dude. The short answer is I don't fully know. I think it's, though, in an effort to simplify, I think it's equal parts luck and hustle. Hustle is a really American word, and I feel strange saying it.
Everyone feels strange saying it. We were writing copy for our new site, and I included the word, like I actually said the same thing about the Savage Bureau in general, is that it's about hustle.
Yeah.
And exactly like you just said, the same trepidation you had using that word, that's what came up in this room. So,
well, maybe
I don't know if we should say hustle. It's like, why do we want to say it? Because we think that's what we mean. And then why do we all feel weird about saying it?
Yeah, I think it's probably because of maybe its genesis in terms of how it's most used is from like street culture and like street hustle. And so like when I talk about hustle, like it comparatively speaking, it's not hustle at all. It's like, it's like
networking.
just whatever, like making more films. So I think that's why we wrestle with that word. Yeah, I think it's equal parts kind of calculated decisions and being proactive about the kind of people you're around and the kind of work you're doing and surrounding yourself with authentic people that think like you. And just luck and just lucky breaks. It's kind of just like a series of events that you almost can only look at in retrospect because while they're happening, you're not really aware of them. Like, so I left Current TV and I started doing a lot of work with actually this company called Micro Documentaries that my dear friend Ben Henredig founded, who's who's still my kind of primary like artistic collaborator and has been since those days.
So you guys work together regularly, like
Yeah.
right now?
So what's a trip? I'll show you my phone. Yeah. So he was an intern at Current TV, just a sweet kind of such a lovely human. You know, he worked his ass off at Current TV. He's still on my phone. You know, he's like founded companies and is just this baller now. And but he's still on my phone as Ben Turn because that's what everyone called him at Current TV. So
I'm
like,
sure he loves
yeah.
that.
So it rings now. He's, you know, a 40-year-old man or whatever who's like founded companies and is done all this rad stuff. And it's like ding ding Ben Turn, and it gives me a little giggle. So he founded a company called Micro Documentaries, kind of on the back of Current TV that I dipped in with, and we did that for a few years. That really pioneered the kind of like at scale short form documentary content platform. Which is really cool and really good education. And we were just churning out tons of little films. And it was more about the process and the scale than maybe the art, kind of. I think Ben would agree with that. And then as that was kind of winding down, I want to say around 2013, something like that. And I was kind of like, what next? What am I really into and how can I get there? And I started just putting myself out there and trying to just make content, basically taking meetings with interesting people, you know, probably sent you a couple emails, you and Mike, and just like all the people I knew that did cool stuff in the...
I think you may have done a few healthcare videos.
Yeah, there you go, a little neutropin.
I didn't see that in your portfolio.
Hey, I don't know how to respond to that. That was for you. But yeah, a little Genentech time. Yeah, so as I was trying to put myself out there was a moment that I can look back to and be like, oh, that was a thing that happened that led to some other stuff. And it was... I had met with a lady, Anastasia, who was head of production at an agency called 11. You know, I'm a filmmaker guy and trying to do some other stuff, and here's my reel, and what do you think, and da-da-da, and then...
11 SF, that was a...
Yeah, they're awesome. I mean, I think they're still around, and Anastasia's awesome. We're still friends. She's at LinkedIn now, I think. I had just got back from Brazil as in my early... you know, kind of post-microdocs, early freelancey world, and I just done a shoot with a Phantom camera in a water park in Brazil, which didn't suck. I mean, the video...
Paid, or was this passion?
This is paid. This is paid, but we were shooting like 4,000 frames a second. Phantom is a high-speed, the high-speed film camera.
But you're in the water in Brazil, so that also doesn't suck.
With like models going down slides. It was, you know, it was not awful. And so we just did that. The video was kind of cheesy, but I had just done that with my dear friend Chad Riley, amazing photographer, and used to be Annie Leibowitz's assistant, just a rad dude. Look him up. Just got back from Brazil, just done that thing, and it was cool. Whatever, it's fine. And then Anastasia, I think maybe I posted about it or something, and then Anastasia from 11, getting back there, was like, hey, I just saw you went to Brazil. We're about to do a big thing for Oakley in Brazil. Do you know any DPs down there? Because it's kind of last minute and you need a visa if you're an American. And I was like, I don't know any DPs down there, but I don't need a visa because I'm English and we can just go there and do stuff. And she's like, all right, you want to go to Brazil and do a Oakley thing? And I was like, yeah. And so what that led to was this,
please.
Yeah, shoot with Gabriel Medina, who won the World Surf League tour event that year.
Plus, you were probably rocking Oakley blades, like on the reg, right?
Exactly. And it was this rad little like back channel way into my surfing. It was one of those moments where I was like world champion surfer. I grew up surfing. I'm a surf photographer, filmmaker. This moment, freelance. It just landed on my lap. It was like this dream come true kind of like gig. Went there, did that, and it was kind of in this role of like they had hired like a big deal photographer to do a big billboard ad campaign, and they just like, let's get some video while we're there too. And that was me and a small team of Brazilian locals. And I think it was the intention of not really doing much with it, but they did. And the video aspect became part of a massive campaign. And then I, got sent to London to film with Mark Cavendish and all these other places and all these other people that was part of this giant Oakley campaign, One Obsession, that's what it's called. And it was like 2/3 of it my footage. And that just fell out of nowhere because they couldn't find an American DP. It's just one of those moments. When I speak to being proactive and the luck aspect, this definitely falls into the luck aspect, though it's based on the proactivity of reaching out to people and finding this wonderful lady, Anastasia, and taking that meeting. And so, you know how it is. It's just like you meet people, and if you're in that conscious and you do good stuff, sometimes you might get a phone call, and that phone call might lead to a thing that someone else sees. Can I say one more story too while I'm on this topic? Cut me off if you want.
No, you go. I want to chime in, but I think I can hold it for a second.
This will be quick. There was another moment like that where I made this little healthcare thing for Sutter Health for my dear friend Brian Hudson it's a little story called Sue's Block about this guy who lost his wife and founded a vineyard. It's a very simple pretty little character study. I'm really proud of it. And it was for like no money, but it was cool. Turns out that got shown at some event or to some board that like a big VP at Google sat on, saw it, contacted Sutter, said who made that. They said me, and then I got the call from that guy. And then Google has been probably my biggest employer in the last like 2 years, just because that guy sat on that board and saw that film in that one day that I made for that other person for no money. So there's another one of those little moments that just could have so easily not happened, but it's led to like me paying my mortgage, and it's like, it's a big deal, but it's also trivial. Anyway.
No, it's not trivial. It's not trivial. And I hope that the folks who are listening, because I think that this is going to be a reoccurring theme. It's a theme in my life, and it's a theme in some of the other folks that we've talked to, and it's going to keep popping up. And that's when a passion project becomes something much bigger. And I think that that's really what this all comes down to. And I think, Adam, I mean, a big reason I even wanted to interview you today was because I'm so impressed with your ability through your career to take a hobby and a passion like surfing and have a profession born from your love, like tying that all together. It's a unique and it's a rare thing. And I mean, I think it's great. I think it's just, you're inspired by surfing, you're inspired by outdoors. You do these things out of passion, you get noticed there. And like this instance is like that perfect moment. And I think that we talked earlier about hustle, right? And I know we use that word. I think some people think that hustle means maybe in a creative career, that it means like, I just have to like work long hours, right? I just have to put in the work. I just have to keep doing this, right? But I don't actually think that that's true. I think that it comes down to like creating those passion projects, putting in the extra effort and the extra love because it's something that you believe in. You're not driven by money. And that's what I'm hearing you say is like, when it came down to it, you looked at this opportunity and that opportunity was a huge springboard, and it's because of something that you were passionate about and something that you really liked. And I think that that to me is the big takeaway, is just like, follow that. And when you pour your heart and your soul and your love into it, combine it with the talent that you have, like anything can happen.
No, it's a really insightful comment. And it's something that like I need to remind myself of more, and we all do, because whenever you do that, it leads to good things. And so you could stack up a bunch of corporate video type things for like 6 months where you make some money and you spend your time doing that and you feels good. But then when you actually stop and do something that isn't that's like just for you, the results are almost exponentially more. Because if you're a brand and you want to hire a production company or director or whatever version of that to make something, you're not necessarily, well, maybe in some cases, but you're not necessarily drawn to the person that's like done, you're not necessarily drawn to like the person that's done the like corporate thing where there's an interview in the boardroom and then some like, more stuff like that. You want to hire the person, I think, generally that has done the thing that you think is cool. And then knowing that they can then convert that for your brand and your vision, right?
Yeah.
So like whenever I've done that, like I did this little film, Sunnydale Kids, I shot it on a 5D a million years ago.
I've watched it.
I just know it led to other things. And I did this thing at Mavericks maybe even like 3 years ago or something like that. I just stood on a boat and filmed Mavericks, but I tried to make it a little different to the kind of like heavy metal version of Mavericks. For people that don't know, Mavericks is a big wave spot that gets up to like 100 feet off of Half Moon Bay, about an hour south of here. I wanted to do this thing in slow motion, and I used this soundtrack, this piece of classical music, and it like got like 2 million views or something like that. And like, so then I talked to clients at, a corporate brand, and they're like looking at stuff and they're like, oh, I saw the Mavericks thing. It was awesome. Like, now can you like, make a case study about, quarterly returns.
You have. Yeah. I actually was watching a bunch of things today, and this all links back. And this is exactly what I was talking to you about. Like, I've admired your work for a long time. We've worked together. I've looked at your work. I've seen the things. There's nuances of your filmmaking and the things like the detail shots and like just some of your techniques, which I tried to horribly emulate. I've noticed that you do that in the passion projects. And I think that's one thing, right? You have a vision, and when it's your passion, you can say, this is how I want it to be. I want this to be slow motion. I'm going to do a shot on this person's hand, on the surfer holding his board, right? It's going to be this tight crop, and it's going to be his hand, and it's just going to be this in slow motion. And then, I'm going to pull out, and it's the beauty of what you've done, in my opinion, is you've also then parlayed that into corporate work, right? Which I think some people have to water down what they do, but you've gotten to this place where you've developed your style, your like your sense of direction, your style of direction, what you do, and people are hiring you for that now, and you get to do that in these corporate things. And I noticed that as I watched and looked through your portfolio right now of the stuff that you've done, is like I see some of those same nuances from the passion projects. And I just think that it's so great that it hasn't been watered down, because so much time in a creative profession, oftentimes you get a client who thinks they have a better vision than you, but you've been fortunate enough for them to hire you and execute your vision.
It's a really acute observation. First of all, I just have to acknowledge that, like, hearing someone tell you that you've done good work and they admire your work is new, and it's awkward for me, and I appreciate it. So I just want to say that.
There's no chance you can't not know that with the people that you've worked for. And I hope that people after this, if someone who doesn't know who you are and then looks at your work and not only sees the work, see who you've worked for.
Yeah,
there's no denying, man. It's like, this isn't just me telling you that you're doing good work.
No, thanks, dude. But every creative has a aesthetic sensibility, right? If I'm doing a little thing at Mavericks, or if I'm doing a thing for a big tech company about a case study, you're bringing that same aesthetic to both. And that is one thing that, like, I think people recognize. We're kind of at present day, right, which is the kind of work I'm doing right now, which is mostly documentary style, short form filmmaking that's like very character driven. And it's what I want to be doing. I have some other goals, but like it's pretty much exactly like the kind of work I want to be doing, and I'm enjoying doing it. It comes from just wanting to spend time with people and meet people and hang out with them and create an environment where everyone feels comfortable. And all of that stuff is really, really kind of non-trivial. I want to meet a subject, research a subject, and hang out with them, no matter what it's for, what brand or what kind of like type of storytelling, and them to feel really quickly, really, really comfortable. And that to come through in an interview, that to come through when they're like, I just did this film for Facebook about affordable housing. This lady, Constance, who it was a jackpot casting wise. I think, anyone could have made a film about her because she's so dynamic and beautiful and just awesome. But like, it's Facebook and it's affordable housing. These are hot topics. And she's this young African-American lady, and it's kind of a heavy story, but like, I wanted her to feel super comfortable right away. I wanted the story to like feel really intimate. I wanted to film, breakfast with her and her kids, and for us to not feel imposing and like extractive, or that we're doing anything that she wouldn't be happy with. And that proliferates through everything I'm trying to do right now. And that's what I'm like, when things veer more in the kind of corporate direction, I'm always trying to like counsel clients that the more it can be pushed towards that, like, I want to stop myself saying buzzwords like intimate and authentic, but intimate and authentic, that kind of documentary storytelling is like really where brands should be going, because people just haven't got the patience for anything else at this point. I'm spending a lot of time honing that craft and really enjoying it.
You're right. People don't have patience for it, but I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between when someone's trying to force intimate and trying to convince you that it's authentic. And I think we see a lot of that. But I think that people can see through that really quickly. And I think that the work that really is true to that, I think it stands out. You don't need to dive deep, just watch it to see there is authenticity to it. Even when it's corporate, and I know the Facebook piece you're talking about, it's very real. And that's, in a day where, privacy and just our current cultural climate, trust, those are big things. And I think that I get your sensitivity towards using those buzzwords to describe work, but I will say that your work is very authentic and is very true. And that comes through. And I think that it's super impressive when you can actually do that for a corporation. And I think, to be honest, I think that's why you're having the success that you're having and getting hired by these corporations because they know it too. They know when they're making fake shit, paying for an agency, and they're putting that out there, and they know when they're making authentic stuff. And
well, I actually like people is the bottom line. Like I'll like happily.
I've noticed that.
Yeah, no, I'll happily like talk to the lady at the checkout at Safeway and like have a moment that makes both of our day. You know, I'm gonna seek that out. How that proliferates through film is that like I actually am invested in the people I'm working with, both crew obviously, but more so in this case the subjects. I actually care. I actually want things to change. I end up telling stories that like are inevitably about some kind of change that may or may not happen. Case in point, that Facebook film apparently went up the chain, and Zuckerberg ended up seeing it, and apparently, I don't know. I think I said apparently it was part of a decision that then led to like $1 billion in donation towards affordable housing in Silicon Valley. I can't confirm or deny that, but like that feels nice, you know, that like you can make something that stirs emotions such that people with power can actually do something. That's the end goal.
So, you know, let's geek out here for just one sec. Let's get into kind of technique and kind of, you know, some of the, I don't know, the more mechanical aspects of things. There was a period too, I think you maybe had maybe you just purchased a new drone, or you were just kind of, I don't know, you were just putting stuff out there. But I remember just oohing and awing over this footage that you were putting out there. I don't even remember how you were putting it out. I don't think it was Instagram. Maybe it was, but somehow I came across it, and you had this beautiful sweeping vistas, maybe over Fairfax, I think where you live, but definitely over like Mount Tam, the surf, the fog. I just remember looking at them, and I remember literally thinking to myself like, ooh, do I need to buy a drone?
Yeah.
And then it actually dawned on me that just merely buying a drone wasn't going to make me create like beautiful stuff like this. And it was another piece to your toolkit, right? Like I know it's just another piece, right? So can you talk to me a little bit about, you know, like the tools you use, the equipment? I mean, I know you do a lot of things. I know you're mostly a director now, but you're still an avid photographer, very accomplished. And I know you have your hands on a lot of pieces, but I'd just love to know a little bit more about some of the technical stuff, geeking out.
Yeah. The drone thing was funny because when it first came around, it was just a way that like any filmmaker suddenly had the ability to like do a shot that 6 months before that was a $10,000 helicopter shot with like police shutting down city blocks. And so it was like, you know, you go spend $1,500 on a Phantom 1 or whatever, and you can just like, you'd fly past horses on a ridge backlit at sunset, and you've got this like, just your production value just went through the roof. And so for the kind of stuff where
amazing.
Yeah, where like, you know, you just want like one of those shots to like open or close a piece and it would just like add so much production value. It's become one of these things like drone shots generally, there's a list of kind of tropes. There was like the DSLR thing happened, everyone was shooting everything really shallow, and then everyone was buying small sliders and doing little slider shots like through doors, and then like everyone was doing drones. And
guilty.
And then, you know, more recently, like quasar tubes, which are these like fluorescent tubes. You see them in every single shot, like in the boxing gym or a music video. It's just like, it's one of these things that has become one of the things that like, because it was so easy and cheap and added a lot of production value, everyone jumped on and then did tons of stuff with it to the point where it got played out. But at the time, and even still, I mean, first of all, it's fun. You're flying a helicopter. It's like, you know, the 14-year-old in you is like, it's just Christmas every day. It's epic. I still own one. I'll use it once in a while. I'll typically try and either get someone else to do it because there's all kinds of liability stuff and legal stuff that's happened since the early days.
Oh, everything's been restricted, right? Like everywhere you go, no-fly zone. If you're like 100 miles from an airport.
First of all, yeah, exactly. You need some kind of license and stuff, which I don't have. And so I'd rather hire someone with all the legal stuff.
Probably for good reason, though, too. Like, I mean, there have been many incidences of people who crash them into crowds of people. And some of these things are like,
I mean, if
big and substantial, you could actually really hurt someone.
No, and it's Wi-Fi. Like something could happen and it could fall from the sky. We want to shoot in Miami recently, and my buddy Stash was, and it just fell from the sky over a kid's soccer practice. That lands on a kid's head. He's going to hospital, and you're going to a courtroom. It's not cool. And so, yeah, that's just one of those areas where you just have to like not. I mean. So you dabbled for a moment, but you're like, yeah, okay, cool. Somebody like you'd be more comfortable saying, we need a drone shot. Here's what I think it should be. You want to review the footage rather exactly. Well, like, I mean, a lot of times what I'll do now is like, before I go to a place, I'll see what there is stock. Like I just did a shoot in Paris, and before I went, I was like, Paris drone establishers and one of the stock things, and there was a beautiful shot of like establishing sunrise over the Seine, and
Sure.
you know, you pay $300 for that, and it's in your film, and and you're not fighting around flying a 2-pound flying object over a city street. So yeah, fun, rad, but you know, now when if ever I do it, I haven't done it for a while, it'll be like somewhere where there's no humans. I flew at Mavs recently, Mavericks, because flying drones, surfing looks awesome. And
Still probably fun, right?
it was fun. It fell out of the sky, and I never saw it again. It just fell into the ocean. Second time I've done that. So that's, you know, that's not cool, but
what about from a general perspective, right? Like I know you now work with, you know, we've talked about this before, right? You assemble a crew, right? It's adamwarmington.com. That's your portfolio, and that's, you know, that's how people would find you. But the reality is you have a lot of talented people that you're working with to do all the projects that we're talking about. How hands-on are you still? Like, how much are you still doing editing? Like, are you always behind the camera? How much production work? How much are you involved?
Very much depends on the project. I would say typically, you know, we make these short doc films that aren't in the kind of like typical agency production company model, which is like big budget, crew of like 20, 30 people. And I've been in that world, and it's, you know, it's fun and exciting, but also stressful. And I could talk about the change in direction from being on that, very much on that track as like a rep director, to just making short doc films for brands, and why that was an intentional choice. It depends on the project. I also have a kind of container company called A+B Pictures. A+B, Adam, Ben, my collaborative partner, we founded a few years ago. The nature of that has changed a little bit. And Ben and I still collaborate on everything together, but the one through line through all of that is a young lady called Amber. And I believe that the name of this podcast is Right Brain, Left Field.
That's correct.
Right. And so it got me thinking that basically Amber is 100% my left brain. I'm scattered. I have ideas flying around, and I think about what images are going to be cool and how to tell the story. And, you know, I'm very focused on narrative stuff. But in terms of like who needs to be where, when, and why, Amber does all of that, and she's incredible. She just does that 10 out of 10 every single time. So that's kind of where everything starts. We talk to a client, they have an idea. I'll try and package that idea for them, spin it off, and, you know, suggest, put my take on it. And then Amber and I kind of jam on how we can make it happen, and then we scale up from there. So that could mean anything from myself directing and a friend DP, Ben, or my friend Noah start film with Amber on set, and then a couple PAs, to that plus get gaffer, grip and electric, sound, VTR, whatever other little bells and whistles are needed for that particular production and or client's needs. Yeah, and it's cool, man, because it's like what you get to do from being that nimble is just kind of like start from the ground and then build a little team for every single project based upon the project's needs, which I love, because there's also like no overhead.
Yeah. This has been awesome. I really appreciated this conversation today. For me, sitting here with you, geeking out about this, I love it. I love hearing it. You said you're 41 now, right? And if you could go back to that day right before, you know, maybe right around the time that you're just getting started, I don't know if it's here in SF or wherever you want to consider that start period, what advice would you give to yourself at that time that you've learned now, looking back? Because hindsight's always 20/20.
Oh, man.
So what would you say to yourself?
It's that question invites a lot of kind of cliched responses, but I'm trying to not. I think it's like do what you actually want to do, or try and do. Because saying do what you want to do supposes that it's actually possible, which it isn't for a lot of people. And so, try and do exactly what you want to do, not what you think other people want you to do. Whether that's like your parents or the industry, like if the industry is like, hey, everything's just like fashion and models and cool and whatever, but you want to do gritty documentary storytelling, like do that. I think it's like listen to that inner voice, which is something I actually have a really hard time doing. And my dear friend Ben helps me a lot with, is trying to cut through the noise of like what you think you should be doing versus what you actually want to be doing beneath the surface. Maybe that's like kind of some weird, like obvious life lesson stuff, but like I think it's real.
When I look at your work, I think your now self has already talked to your 25-year-old self. Maybe it's what you put out there, but I swear to God, man, when I look at your work and I think like the corporate work that you've done, for some of the brands you've done it for is beautiful. And I think it's true to exactly what you've talked about, your documentary style. I think staying true to your style. I mean, honestly, I can look back at my own career and feel like there have been moments where I've given up my creative vision because I wanted to make a client happy. And I'm sure we've all experienced that. But I think looking at your body of work and what you've managed to do and where you're at right now, I think you've really accomplished the advice that you just gave to your younger self.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I think that there was one definite fork in the road, which was I was on track to be kind of like lifestyle director guy, like did the piece for Uber and the Oakley stuff, and could have like really doubled down on that and done more of that. But like I was finding, if I was being real with myself, that like I was finding a lot of it kind of vapid, lifestyle-y fashion, just like people running around doing stuff like with no real, just trying to sell something basically. And there's no substance to it, even if it looks cool and like is people running around doing cool things. And it was a very conscious decision to like try and move way more towards actual stories with actual people that actually might move the needle in some way. I'm stoked with that decision because it was scary at the time, but I feel pretty good about it.
Mission accomplished. And if anyone listening to this is curious about digging a little deeper, you should just go to adamwarmington.com. That will also be on the site. It'll be available. But you can see a full portfolio of all of Adam's films, his corporate work, and everything that he's done. I just want to thank you for coming by again. It's been a pleasure. It's everything I'd hoped for and more. It's been awesome, Adam.
Thanks, brother.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please give us a shout out, share with friends, give us a good rating. Till next time, peace.